There is a lot of hype surrounding Jalen Green, and for a good reason. So in case you're wondering, yes, we are going to get into all of it. As of right now, it's still developing, but it appears Green will be receiving $500,000 to prevent him from playing against, quote, actual competition, an MSN report says. He's also going to bypass college for his ultimate NBA dream, which also seems to be an interesting trend as of lately, with some other high-profile prospects doing it as well. A competition could be on the rise with two unlikely competitors, the NBA and the NCAA. And finally, we shouldn't forget, Jalen likely to be the first Filipino star in the NBA. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's obviously a ton going on here. It might be a good idea to start with the simple question, who is Jalen Green? We've done a ton of analysis over the past few years, seen a ton of high school athletes, overseas athletes, and everything in between. And I don't want this to be taken lightly, but he's hands down the most talented basketball player I've seen in recent memory. The amount of potential he carries is unparalleled with very few exceptions. I think he has a very similar playstyle to Russell Westbrook in his explosiveness and a Zach LaVine feel shot. He could jump out of the gym, and on top of that, he makes it look effortless, like he's floating until he's ready for the vicious poster and finally a quick flex. But what really makes him interesting is that he could dribble like a league-bound point guard already, and he could put up a quick shot off the dribble from the perimeter, as well as drain back-to-back threes. Oh, and I wouldn't contest him in the paint. But let's get into his stats briefly. He's 18 years old, 6'5", 6'7" wingspan, and he's been playing basketball at San Joaquin Memorial for the past 4 years. As of right now, he's also the #1 ESPN recruit. His freshman year, he averaged 18.1 points, 9 rebounds, and 3.2 assists a game. As a sophomore, he averaged 27.9 points per game, 7.7 rebounds, and 2.8 assists, as well as led his team to their second consecutive state quarterfinals appearance. His junior season came with 33 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. He also shattered his high school record of career points that had stood for 40 years by the end of his junior year. For his senior year, he was transferred to Prolific Prep, averaged 31.5 points, and was named Player of the Year by MaxPreps, and was also named Sports Illustrated All-American Player of the Year. He was also selected to play in 3 of the most prestigious showcase games in the US. Unfortunately, this would never happen due to the coronavirus. Oh, and all the while acquiring a list of honors including 2018 FIBA Under-17 World Cup MVP. I'll just put them here on the screen for those of you that are curious. But I could go on all day talking about his high school career and how it's been absolutely staggering to say the least, but I think you guys get the point. So before we move on, I will point out one final thing, something no one's really talking about, 2 key factors that will undoubtedly promote Jalen's success. For one, his work ethic, mindset, and killer instinct are on a whole nother playing field, which is actually quite obvious considering that his summer routine as a 13-year-old consisted of morning runs with a weighted vest, and at only 16, he had this to say in a post-game interview. "Every time I step on the court, I'm the best. I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you're working on, or what you're doing. If you're guarding me and you're trying to score on me, I'm gonna lock you up. I'm gonna get by you, and I'm gonna get a bucket. Simple as that." Something so assertive, articulate, and downright confident that you wouldn't expect to come out of a 16-year-old's mouth. And for 2, he has the entire country of the Philippines standing firmly behind him, and he proudly claims his inherited nickname, the Unicorn. Alright, so what have we covered so far? A lot of hype? Yeah, I'd say so. But I'd also say he's a generational player, so it's really no coincidence. As some of you might know, many of the athletes we've covered here have a lot of downside and risk that comes along with their promise. On the other hand, Jalen, he has a lot of promise. And that's really it. But let's cover some of the topics we started with. Number 1, it recently came out that Jalen Green will be skipping college. This could be a trend that has been glamorized by the balls. But with LaMelo and Jalen being 2 of the highest value players to go this route in recent memory, it's still new and innovative. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see this trend becoming more predominant. It's a decision that comes with its pros, but also cons. One of the most alluring prospects here is obviously money. In a new program, the G League planned to shell out well over 6 figures to high school athletes with a fraction of Jalen's stock value, something we'd expect as an absolute and very unlikely minimum for Jalen. The G League is also expecting to generate well over $1 million in endorsements and other advertisements from Jalen. He's clearly going to be making a ton of money this way, and after all, what kind of 18-year-old would be able to pass this up? There will obviously be no distractions this way either. Obviously, with college, Jalen would have to focus on college. He'd also be pioneering a pathway to the NBA that, like I said, could become much more mainstream. But there are a few cons, however. As the highest profile player to take this route as an 18-year-old, he will be subject to a lot of scrutiny. His development will also be put under a microscope, and with so many of the details of this route being unclear, he has no choice but to put a lot of his trust in the leaders of this organization. In other words, he is very much at the mercy of the G League. This story is still breaking, but as of right now, it does appear that the NBA will be paying Jalen Green $500,000 to prevent him from playing in the G League because it might be too hard for him, which is also in part to avoid playing with teammates who could be jealous, earning a small fraction of his expected salary. A lot of the details of this story are still panning out, so for now, I don't want to say too much about it. This could pan out a lot of different ways. I've also seen a few reports that suggest although you would make more money initially this way, being paid to play professionally while skipping college, it could drastically decrease the stock value you would have had otherwise if you did play in college, and the money made would have been more in the long run. But again, this is all pretty new territory and it's hard to say. If you haven't already, drop a like. Those can really help a channel like ours grow. It's your favorite 50,000 subscriber hopefuls, Courtical Hoops, and we'll see you on the next one.